I want to talk to you a little bit about shingles. This here is a shingle that we've taken off the roof that we're replacing today. This is the shingle that we're going back and putting on the roof. There's lots of different manufacturers and they all have their pros and cons. At Your Service Roofing, we're big believers in Owens Corning, especially this shingle right here, which is called the duration shingle. When we look at the existing shingle that came off the roof, there's a few things that we can tell, and I think it's important to point out. One is how many nails go into a shingle. Most shingle manufacturers require 4 nails. However, for high wind warranties, they usually require 6 nails. Every roof that we do has at least 6 nails in each shingle. So when we look at this, we're going to take a look at not only how many nails, but where they shot the nail. When you look at the shingle, it can be hard to tell. It's actually easier if we flip it over. We can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So pretty safe to say that they did a 4-nail application, which again is acceptable, but I don't think there's many quality roofing contractors out there today doing 4-nail applications. Everyone really should be doing 6-nail applications. The other key thing to look at is where those nails are. Every shingle has what we call a nail zone. So you can see, even though this shingle is 15, 20 years old, there's a faint chalk line right through here, and that's where that nail needs to be. However, you're going to see that where that nail actually is much higher than that. The reason why this needs to be nailed in this area here is that a laminate shingle like this, often referred to as an architectural shingle, a dimensional shingle, but is actually 2 different shingles that are laminated together. So this section here that's called the headlap has this overlay. That's all part of the same shingle. But this portion here, as you can see, it pulls apart, actually is a second shingle that's got a number of seal strips, and then they are laminated together. So where we place that nail is very important because it needs to hit both the headlap and the underlay, the second shingle. If you look sideways here, you can see that there's an area where the shingle, the lower shingle and the upper shingle, overlap. That's called the common bond. And this common bond, which is here, that's where your nail needs to be shot. And so this one touched the common bond just a little bit, but the rest of these are too high. When we flip it over, we can see, obviously, clearly, here's the line where the 2 shingles meet, and this nail was shot too high. It should be in this common bond. Again, this nail, too high. This nail here, too high. And then this nail kind of just barely caught it. So of those 4 nails, I'm going to say that 3 were definitely not shot right. That 4th one's pretty suspect as well. It's critically important that the nails are placed in that common bond. So let's take a look at the Owens Corning shingle. This is the Owens Corning duration shingle, and it has a piece of technology in it which is critically important. This is called their Sure Nail strip, or the Sure Nail technology. Owens Corning patented this technology and is the only shingle on the market that has this. So this Sure Nail strip does a few things. One, it makes sure that the nails are not overdriven or overshot. It also protects it from wind damage. When that nail is shot in here and that nail head is fastening this down, it makes it incredibly difficult for the wind to lift the shingle and rip that nail head through the shingle because of this band. This gives a very clear line of where that nail is supposed to be. It's very obvious if that nail is not put in the right spot. So when you look at this shingle, it's difficult for a roofer. On a roof like this, there's probably 10,000 nails. And it's difficult to hit this very faint chalk line every single time. I can sympathize with them. That's not easy to do. However, if you're an installer and you have this shingle, it becomes very easy to tell exactly where that nail needs to go. And it's obviously very easy for us to do quality control and to look at pictures and to know if those nails are put in the right spot or not. Now, one other thing, we talked about wind warranties. Owens Corning, because of the Sure Nail technology, and it performs much better against high winds. So you can actually do this application with 4 nails in the nail zone and still have their high wind warranty. Now, at Your Service, we're still going to use 6 nails because we think that's the right way to do it. But as far as I'm aware, this is the only shingle on the market that will have a high wind warranty with only 4 nails in that nail zone. So we've talked a little bit about nail placement, and that those nails need to go in the proper nail zone for every shingle, not just the Owens Corning duration shingle, but every shingle on the market has a specific zone where that nail needs to hit. If they're not in that nail zone, there's really 2 other options. They can be high nailed or low nailed. So I'm going to give you an example here. These are just nails that I just kind of stuck in here for demonstration purposes. This would be considered a high nail, right? It's above the nail zone, and this would be a low nail below the nail zone. If it's above the nail zone, it's high nailed, and we already talked about that. One of those problems is that it's not in the common bond, it's not in the proper nail zone. However, if it's low nailed, the problem becomes as the second shingle is overlapped on top, it's going to rest like this. Now, if that nail is low nailed, it's exposed. This is what we call a shiner, right? And so this is basically reflective material. So as you walk a roof, you'll see the sun glistening off any low shot nails. We just call them shiners. The problem with shiners is that nail is now exposed. So over time on that roof, it's going to get wet, it's going to be exposed to the elements, it's going to rust. As that rusts, the actual nail will disintegrate, and now what you're going to be left with is a pinhole gap in your shingle where water is now running down the roof, entering that, and creating a very slow leak. These leaks are also incredibly difficult to find. Once this shingle is weathered for 15 years, finding a hole that small is incredibly difficult. So a low nail is really, really problematic. We want to avoid those at all costs. Because of that, if you're an installer on the crew and you're shooting nails, you know that these low nails are bad. You know that they're easy to find. So a lot of roofers are going to err on the side of caution, and as they're moving quickly trying to install a roof, they're then going to hit the high nail because those are not going to be exposed. You're not going to be able to see those. However, that will create long-term problems like we've discussed earlier. If that's high nailed, it's not in the common bond, and the two shingles will actually separate over time, and you'll begin to see this lower shingle here will delaminate from the main shingle, from the headlap, fall off, and then you have obviously problems with detached shingles. So we've talked a little bit about the nail zone. We've talked about high nails and low nails. We also have the issue of overdriven or underdriven nails. So what that means is if an installer is going to be shooting this nail in, if it's underdriven, that means it's sticking up. It's not flush. The whole point of a roofing nail is this big flat head on the nail, and that's meant to capture the asphalt shingle and fasten it in place and hold it nice and tight. If the nail is raised up, then that head is no longer fastening the shingle to the roof. The other problem is when you stack the next shingle on top of it, it's going to hold that up and raise it. It won't bond and seal properly to the shingle below it. That's not something we see too often. That's pretty easy for an installer to catch. They see that nail that's a little bit high, they grab their hatchet hammer, they strike the nail and seat it nice and flush, problem solved. However, the overdriven nail is a real problem in the industry today. A lot of times the air pressure can be too high in the nail gun and it will actually countersink the nail. It'll shoot the nail too far into the shingle. When that happens, this nail is actually countersunk into the shingle, and now again the head on this nail is no longer fastening it to the roof. It's basically just there. The shingle at that point is just stuck to the roof by the sealant strips and the other surrounding shingles. If those shingles have a lot of overdriven nails, they're really not fastened to the roof. It makes it far more susceptible to wind and storm damages. So one thing I hope that you take away from this is that nailing of shingles is actually critically important. They need to be not underdriven or overdriven, but properly flush with the mat of the shingle. They need to be in the proper location, in the nail zone, in the common bond of the shingle. They also need to be not high nailed or low nailed, because those will cause problems as well. As a roofer is installing a roof, you're going to hear that nail gun popping very quickly. It can seem that these guys aren't taking their time and doing that properly, but you got to remember these guys nail about 10,000 nails every single day. They get pretty darn good at it. We make sure to do quality control checks, and our site supervisors are on the ground to get up on the roof and double check and spot check all day long, making sure that that nail pattern is correct, that they're in the proper location, and that they're driven to the proper depth. If you're in the Cincinnati market and looking for a new roof, or maybe just looking for an inspection to find out what condition your roof is in, just click the link below, give us a call, check us out on our website.